In the Vieux Carré stood a clutch of curious spectators, families in satin waistcoats and flower show dresses, marchands with reed baskets on their heads, and assorted children, dogs, and tourists. Sunday, February 26, 1883, was unseasonably raw for New Orleans, with a wintry northwest wind gusting in from the Gulf. A gray mist shrouded the corner of Dauphine Street. The woman they were watching struck a dramatic figure in front of Le Pretre Mansion, the city's showplace. Though not tall, she held herself high and wore a regal walking costume, a widow's peak bonnet and black cashmere gown with a tight brocaded jacket and an apron overskirt drawn back in a bustle that cascaded to the sidewalk. Everyone could see she was much affected by the sight before her. Perhaps she drew a lace handkerchief to her eye. Perhaps she clutched the cambric cravat at her throat. Mrs. Frank Leslie was revisiting her childhood home for the first time in nearly 40 years. With her were her best friend, Jane G. Austen, the popular novelist and descendant of Miles Standish, and her newspaper corps, writer Joseph Nagle and artist Charles Upham, who were there to record the trip. The Dauphine Street mansion couldn't have failed to impress them. The elaborate building of lime-washed stucco, enwrapped in tiers of lacework balconies and hung with flower baskets, rose 3.5 stories, towering over the low neighborhood houses. As they continued down Orleans Street toward the French Market, they could see the Queen City's glory days were past. Rusted gates sagged on broken hinges, and stain-blotched buildings in various stages of disrepair lined streets filled with litter and pools of stagnant water. The once manicured Jackson Square, where they veered off toward the Rue de l'Allevé, had become a dusty place peopled with phantoms. The French Market, though, was as Mrs. Leslie remembered it, only more so. An iron edifice half the length of a football field, designed by pioneer African-American architect Joseph Abelard, covered the bazaar, and 200 booths sprawled over the grounds outside. The market seemed bigger, busier, and noisier. Over the clatter of mule-drawn carts rang the cries of peddlers. Cala, tout chaud! Hot rice cakes, a babble of French, Spanish, gombo, and German, and the boom-boom-ticka-boom of spasm bands. Mrs. Leslie knew good copy when she saw it and dispatched her staff. Artist Charles Upham hoisted his poke box to his lap, and Joseph Nagle strolled off with his notebook into the seething curiosity shop. Beneath tented booths were clotheslines strung with pants for 50 cents and ropes of jalapenos and onions. Open tables displayed palmetto fans, toys, alligator skins, and snowy plantation cotton. Hagglers bickered beside sugarcane stalks, and Choctaw Indians with babies on cradle boards sat in a semicircle with sassafras and roots next to a parrot on a stand. The ladies departed early. Mrs. Leslie had taken rooms at the St. Charles Hotel, a Corinthian columned palace that one British traveler compared to St. Peter's in Rome. In her suite later that evening, she received the press. Reporters found her middle-aged, but a handsome lady all the same, cast in the Creole mold with brilliant dark eyes, dark brown hair, and a slight olive complexion, a description unlikely to please her. Yes, she exclaimed, she was forever a woman of the South in heart and feeling. "This is my home," she continued. "I was born in a house somewhere on Dauphine Street and raised until I was 12 years old, partly in the city and partly on a plantation, nursed by a dear old mammy.